Previously on Not Spawn Year, I'm going to take my phone and shake it like a magic 8-ball, and my CLZ comic app will miraculously bring up a comic for me to review tomorrow. I wonder what it will be. Oh, it's Wolverine number 126. I guess we'll take a look at that next time and see if it's any good. And now, the conclusion. Welcome back, everybody. It's day 15 of my comic review video day calendar. And as just mentioned in the well put together recap, it's Wolverine number 126. This is written by the indomitable Chris Claremont with art by Francis Yu. And it's 1998, and Chris Claremont is still working hard, going strong, and doing what he does best. He is the best at what he does, and what he does is very complicated, and I don't know how he keeps everything straight. He's still doing his mutant soap opera thing, and has a bazillion characters to juggle, somehow remembers all of his history and continuity and everything that makes these characters tick, and it's just remarkable. I've read certainly some Claremont here and there, not anything like as much as I need to. I need to go back and do his whole X-Men run at some point, but it is wild and remarkable to me that this stuff is as good as it is this late in the game. I honestly didn't realize he worked on this book, and I don't know how long his run on this is. I don't think he's there from the beginning, and this is not too long before this book ends and is eventually relaunched, I don't think. I actually don't know how many issues this volume went. This is technically the second volume of Wolverine, because the first is the miniseries from the late 80s, and then it becomes a monthly in 1989, and I own most of that in singles, but have only read bits and pieces of it. This is another series that I've always meant to go through my whole collection with and read all of it, and just have never gotten around to it, and this really makes me want to finally go and do that. I don't know how my app pulled up an issue that felt as epic all on its own as this does. This feels like a big deal. This was a roller coaster ride. I really enjoyed this issue, and the amount of stuff that Claremont gets done in 22 pages is astounding. And it's just one surprise twist after another, but not horribly gimmicky, at least for soap opera comics, at least for this kind of melodrama. Like, everything follows, it all makes sense at the end, but it really takes you for a ride, and it's also just quintessential Wolverine. It's crazy how much of Wolverine's lore and the classic stuff and his characterization and just what this character is all about is in this issue. Like, I'll go this far. If number 126 of Wolverine Volume 2 was the only Wolverine thing you ever read, you would have a really good sense of who this guy is, what he believes in, what his powers are, his ability, the whole nature-nurture thing with Wolverine, the question of whether he's more animal than man, and what separates him from characters like Sabretooth. Sabretooth is here, and you get to the crux of the mirror image with that character and what their relationship is all about. You get Wolverine's relationship with women and with Japan, and his honor code, and his relationship with Kitty Pryde, and the tension and camaraderie and chemistry that those two characters have. There's a bunch of stuff here, like origin is here. You've got, to some degree, because you've got the bone claws. I didn't remember that went back this far. My history is all whacked out with that. I'm going to need to go back and do a little research again, because I thought that all came after this, but this is 98, and we have the bone claws, and Wolverine has, for some reason, before this issue starts, been stripped of his animanium completely, and so he still has his healing factor, and he's got claws, but they're bone now, and there's this shocking twist at the end of this that I guess I'll just give away right now, which is that it turns out that he and Sabretooth have somehow switched places, and now Sabretooth is like Weapon X and is able to best Wolverine in a fight because he now is infused with animanium, which makes him really scary, because the big difference between these two characters is Wolverine is tempered by a conscience and Sabretooth is not. So you get to the end of this and Sabretooth says, "I'm king of the world," and it's exciting and it's terrifying, and like I feel like I've just given the plot synopsis of an entire like graphic novel or miniseries or like 5 to 6 issue arc, and all of this happens in one issue. And of course, this isn't just a standalone issue, but I was able to follow what was happening just fine. There's a nice recap at the beginning, by the way. Claremont is the master of cliffhangers, and it seems like there must be a big one right before this, that Wolverine is going to marry Viper, or says Viper is my wife, which is curious because we actually get their wedding in this issue, and he says she is my wife. So I don't really understand why they have to get married if they're married already. That was kind of odd. But there is a fold-out page at the beginning that gives you this nice recap that on one side gives you all the major players and gives you kind of a brief dossier of each of the major people that are involved. And then it gives you a second page that gives you not just information about what's happened in the most recent issues that will inform this. I mean, it's very like previously on Lost. It does a really good job of, or previously on X-Men, I should say. It does a good job of giving you what you need if you haven't been reading this, although I think this is probably readable even without that to some degree. But I also really appreciate that it gives you, it does it in panels, just like the rest of the comic, instead of just giving you like one single image with all that information. So just really thoughtful about getting the reader up to speed. And I don't know if every issue with Claremont does that, but almost as if it's going, this issue is a big deal and everybody needs to be able to read it because stuff is going down here and you've got to check this issue out. And I'm going to tell you, 1998, this is like 25 years ago, stuff is going down here and you need to read this issue. This is wonderful. So we find out at the beginning of this, if you've not read the previous issue, like I haven't, that Viper has been mind controlling a bunch of women in Wolverine's life. Like every beautiful woman that is still alive that Wolverine knows practically shows up in this issue. And they've all been brainwashed, mind controlled to bring Wolverine to Viper so that they can get married. And the big twist is that Wolverine is doing this of his own accord because he owes the first woman he ever loved, who kind of is responsible for tempering him and for domesticating him and for helping him find his humanity, he owes her a great debt. And that's where the Japanese background comes from, his kind of Eastern honor code. It comes from all of that, where it isn't that he owes someone a debt because that he owes Viper a debt because she did something for her. He owes this, I think her name is Saffron, and who I've not heard of before, but is apparently really, really important to Wolverine's background. I'm sorry, not Saffron, Seraph. And I don't know if this is the first place she's brought up. We get a just real quick flashback describing their relationship and how Viper was involved with all of this. And this is only 4 panels, so I'll just read this real quick. It says, in the beginning, and this is Wolverine talking, there was Seraph, the feistiest of fallen angels. She built this bar, hooked up with her. Those days were the best. Viper was freelance then. She's a mercenary, she's a hitman, long before she became Madam Hydra. To save me, Seraph took on Sabretooth. Viper got us home. Weird thing was, or I guess Viper is a terrorist now, but this reads like at the time, maybe she was an assassin. Anyway, Viper got us home. Weird thing was, Seraph insisted she be part of the caper, almost like she knew how it would turn out. So the idea is this Seraph woman, and again, I don't know anything about her. Maybe she's a mutant. It seems like perhaps she has some sort of precognition and can see the future. That's how I'm reading this anyway. I don't know if that's right. But the idea seems to be Wolverine trusts her and will do anything she wants or thinks she needs. And so she tells Wolverine to give Viper whatever she wants. And so eventually, years later, now at this point, what Viper asks for is for Wolverine to marry her. And the whole thing is very mysterious, and we don't fully understand the reasons for all of this, but Wolverine is doing this sight unseen because of the debt he owes to Seraph. And every other woman that shows up here is angry with Wolverine for marrying a terrorist and a crazed supervillain for obvious reasons. She's Madam Hydra. Jubilee freaks out. The Phoenix freaks out. By the way, I didn't know Jean Grey was around at this point. I don't know what iteration of the Phoenix this is exactly, because I know we've come up with various ways to kind of bring her back, but I thought she technically wasn't really resurrected until just a couple of years ago, I guess now a few years ago in the comics. So I'm sure somebody will leave a comment and let me know what's going on here, but I'm reading this out of context, and like, Jean Grey is just here, and everybody is wearing green. I assume that's Viper's doing. She's just messing with everybody and making them all look like her, I suppose. But either that or Francis Yu thinks that attractive women all look better in green. And Jean Grey is freaking out on them, so everybody leaves except for Kitty Pryde. Although in Jubilee's defense, she wanted to stick around, but Kitty Pryde pulled rank and told her to leave. And Kitty is very, like I said, I really like their chemistry in this. One of the big things that my big takeaways from this is, and I mentioned this in another review a few episodes ago, I haven't spent enough time with Kitty Pryde, or maybe that wasn't even this series. There was some comic review I did not too long ago on the channel where I talked about this. But anyway, Kitty Pryde is a character that I've not spent enough time with, and I know what it was. Jason and I ranked our favorite X-Men, and I couldn't put Kitty Pryde on the list because I just haven't done enough with her. And I knew that she had a very special relationship with Wolverine, and that has a lot to do with why people are so enamored with her. And in just the 20-something pages I read her, I found myself very enamored with her. And I've seen her in things before. She's shown up in comics I've read. This is the first time where I went, okay, I really get it now. She's so level-headed, and she's spunky and fun and, real independent and a go-getter and all of that. But she also just really believes in her friend and trusts Wolverine and knows there's got to be more to this than what it looks like. At first, everybody assumes that he must be mind-controlled, just like the women are. And Wolverine says, I can see why you'd think that, and wouldn't that be great, but that's not what it is. You all just have to trust me. This is something I have to do. And nobody hears him out. Nobody asks him any questions, except for Kitty Pryde. Somehow Viper knows she'll stick around which is kind of weird. There's a little bit of people having some sort of precognition that they shouldn't, just because the issue needs certain things to happen, that I didn't fully understand, and I thought this part of it was maybe a little bit of a cheat. It's a real minor complaint, but there's this bit where they're at the wedding and nobody else shows up, and Viper banks that Kitty Pryde will be there. Maybe just because she knows that relationship as well as the reader is supposed to, for whatever reason, where they are so close. Of course Kitty Pryde would stick around, and maybe if anybody else did, it would just be gravy. So I guess it's not a big deal or anything, but I raised my eyebrow at that a little bit. So they're going to get married, and Kitty Pryde sticks around and actually pays attention to Wolverine's reasons, and she understands it, supports it, even though it's messed up, of course, and she sticks around to witness it, and they need her there, and this is why Viper banks on it, because, of course, the wedding is not legal, the marriage is not legal unless there's a witness. And again, I don't understand why it opens with, she's my wife, if they have to make sure this wedding is legal so that she'll be his wife. And they go through with the ceremony in one single page, and the officiant says, you may kiss the bride, and then Sabretooth shows up and stabs him in the back, which is our first big twist. Oh my god, here comes Sabretooth. And like I said earlier, this is one of the big things that makes me go, oh, quintessential Wolverine comic. Every major important thing about this character is here, including Sabretooth showing up and talking about how he always fights Wolverine on his birthday. That's a big thing with their relationship. And B, that classic Sabretooth line that I feel like he says all the time. I've heard it a decent amount of times. It's even in the Wolverine Zen pinball machine. Nobody kills the runt but me. That's in here. And so they fight, and Sabretooth is just messing with Wolverine and makes him think that he is winning, or at least that they're kind of at a stalemate. And there's this wonderful but terrible moment that's really unsettling, where Kitty Pryde realizes that something is off with Sabretooth and that he's just toying with Wolverine, because Sabretooth tries to kill Viper, and Kitty Pryde touches her so that Sabretooth will phase right through Viper. And when that happens, Viper feels really funky, and it hurts horribly, because even though she's phasing, going through adamantium hurts you a lot. So we're told it doesn't give you any lasting effects if you have Kitty Pryde's powers, but it makes you want to die. It hurts that bad. And importantly, if it happens to Kitty, she also can't use her powers right away again, because it hurts too much. And so she puts two and two together and goes, wait a minute, I had this happen once with Wolverine himself when we first met, and he was in the danger room. And she puts everything together and goes, holy crap, Sabretooth has adamantium in him. And that's when Sabretooth throws Wolverine into a big body of water, and so he's gonna make it. But Kitty Pryde manages to save him, but then she is now phased through Sabretooth and is in trouble and can't save herself. And Sabretooth has this great, epic, crazy moment that feels like a real, tides are turning kind of bit. I mean, if this is a TV show that I'm binging on Netflix, I'm canceling the rest of my evening and I'm continuing on. And he says, I'm king of the world. And then he's about to go after Kitty Pryde, and she has kind of famous last words, "I know Logan will avenge me." He says that'll be the day, slash, blood, we don't know what happens. God, that's a killer cliffhanger. This issue is fantastic. Like, I can't tell you how badly I want to just rush off and read the very next issue and, more of this series in general. But this makes me go, like, God, why have I not read more Claremont than I have? This stuff is great. And don't get me wrong, it's a little wordy. There's definitely more narration than it needs. My main issue with it is that there's some really great character paralleling and mirroring between Wolverine and Sabretooth, and Claremont, in a 2-page spread, breaks down why these men are different. As I talked about earlier, that Wolverine, even though he struggles with his animal nature, he has a conscience. He cares about people. The fact that he wants to be more than the sum of his parts is what makes him better than Sabretooth and makes him more than an animal. And Sabretooth thinks that he's superior because he only listens to his baser instincts, and he thinks that the world is his playground. Again, I'm king of the world, and he takes what he wants and thinks of himself as like a god, basically. And the problem is, all of that is very clear in their interactions, and I don't need narration that comes out and explains all of that to me, even from Wolverine's perspective. I feel like it has that problem that Scott Snyder has in a lot of his Batman run, particularly during New 52, where he says, where he will basically on the page do the analysis for me. And I'm like, give me a little bit of credit as a reader. Like, I get that this is commercial, and I get that it's soap opera, and I get that it's comics and words and pictures, and it's supposed to, read fast and all of that. But, like, I don't know, well, I say read fast, I mean, the narration also really bogs it down. But there's a good story here. Like, give yourself some credit, give me some credit. That's the biggest issue I have with it. But this is wonderful. This is Wolverine through and through. Like I said, if you never read any other single Wolverine comic, read this. It'll make you want to read more. And I've already told you everything that happens in it. But it's crazy how distilled down to the major components this character and this world is here, and how much of the movie The Wolverine is in it. Like, I had never seen Viper before I saw that movie, and now I get why she's there. Like, it almost felt like, and I'm not saying that movie is an adaptation of this comic, and it kind of felt while I was reading it like somebody must have read specifically this issue when that movie got made, but that may not be true because there's so much just classic traditional Wolverine stuff in this regardless. I don't know how all that gets packed in here. I said 22 pages. I think this one might be a little oversized, actually. It might be more like 27 or 28 to 30, but this is great. I also am not the biggest fan of this art. It's okay. It's serviceable. I think the action is really good. I'm just not the biggest fan of some of Yu's character models with the faces and expressions. It's not even that they're too exaggerated. It's just that I think in some places they're a little bit too like cartoony or overly simplified. Yeah, maybe some of it is exaggeration a little bit. Like that face Wolverine has at the top of that page is a little bit odd. And I think that these models, like, it actually reminds me a lot of, so now that I'm looking at it, who drew that? Because it's not Capullo. It reminds me of, and I got to go back to Spawn. Sorry about that. It reminds me a little bit of whoever drew Blood Feud. Like, Sabretooth's face there looks a lot like Sangster in Blood Feud. But, anyway, that is the other thing I wanted to mention real quick is there are some fun ads in this one, and I meant to bring up print ads more as I go through this series, and I'll do this real briefly because we're already close to half an hour. But there is a neat 2-page ad, over 2 pages, where we're actually in this comic paying attention to where the ads are in relation to the artwork. That's been a problem with some other books we've looked at, but here is an ad for Legends of the Dark Knight, where you see a Joker action figure, and I had 1 or 2 of these, but not these specifically, the ones that you see here, but I had a couple from this line. This is really neat. You get a Joker through Batman eyes, and that is an action figure that you're looking through the eye holes for, and then you flip the page, and you see Man-Bat and the rest of Joker and the Penguin, and that's a really fun way to do a double ad like that. Kind of crazy that Kenner fit the bill for that much space with this, especially because this is a Marvel comic and not a DC comic. And then there's an ad that's supposed to look like an old, like, 1950s comic ad for a bunch of silly gadgets that you can order in the mail, and it's for the Game Boy printer and the Game Boy photo game, where you could take pictures with your Game Boy and print them. And believe it or not, I actually have one of those. My stepdad's father, so my, I guess, step-grandfather, who passed away a lot of years ago now, was really into gadgets and liked handheld video games, and he had that when I was a kid and used to take it with us camping, and it was one of the things that he left to me that I got to hang on to after he passed away. So it was kind of neat to see an ad for that. Anyway, I digress. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Sure appreciate it. And tomorrow I'm going to pick one, but I will probably use that method again because I would not have ended up reviewing this, and it might have been a long time, if ever, before I finally read this. And what a wonderful issue. So I will see you again tomorrow, folks, and happy reading.